This is the third feedback video for the chapter-based questions about the Reformation. I said I was going to cover questions 2 and 3 in the previous video, but I only got around to doing question 2. The third question, which I'll treat separately here, was what were the key differences between various Protestant groups in the 16th century? I'll focus on Luther, Zwingli and Calvin, and then on the Anabaptists, who are rather different, rather more radical challenge than the first two. Luther began from questioning anything that was not based in the Bible. He had various critiques of the Catholic Church, which I'm not going to talk about all of them right now. I'll just focus on things which are relevant to the question of his differences with other reformers. He believed in salvation through faith, not through good works, as the Catholic Church had taught. Only your faith will gain you salvation, not what you do. And he challenged the belief in transubstantiation, the belief that the bread and wine in Holy Communion or Eucharist was transformed literally into the flesh and blood of Christ. He argued that Christ was there literally in the Eucharist, but the bread and wine were not transformed. He denied that the priest had this miraculous ability to transform substances into other substances, which incidentally downgraded the need for a priesthood. If they are not weekly miracle workers, they're not a special class of people anymore. Luther in place put the idea of a priesthood of all believers. Zwingli agreed with most of Luther's methodology and most of his criticism of the Catholic Church, but he clashed with Luther, as we see in the source discussion this week, over the question of the Eucharist. Luther said Christ was literally there in the Eucharist, in the Lord's Supper, whereas Zwingli said he's only there in a mystical, spiritual presence. Calvin, the reformer in Geneva, also disagreed slightly with the first two over the Eucharist, seeing the Eucharist merely as being a symbolic presence of Christ. Calvin followed the line in the Bible where Christ says, whenever people are gathered in my name, I will be there. So he downgrades it more to a symbolic presence of Christ rather than Christ being there in any form in the physically or symbolically, actually in the bread and the wine. Calvin also believed in predestination. Luther was sort of moving towards this concept with his belief that nothing you can do can change God's mind. You can't change God's mind through your actions, through your good works. Calvin argues God has already made up his mind. He argues that if God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and exists in all times in the universe, God doesn't have time in the sense that we have. God doesn't decide to save or damn you based on your actions or your faith. He's already decided. If he exists in all time, he must already know what's going to happen in what for us is the future. If he's all powerful, he must know what's going to happen because he's decided what is going to happen. Therefore, your fate is predestined. Finally, the Anabaptists, they were a far more radical challenge in many ways. The name Anabaptist refers to their belief in only having adult baptism. They rejected infant baptism. And the name literally means baptized again, because they might have been baptized as infants into the Catholic Church, but now they're being rebaptized. It's hard to generalize about their beliefs because Anabaptist was a bit of an insult, like calling somebody a commie during the Cold War. It does not necessarily imply a common church with a common set of beliefs. There's more of a catch-all term for any kind of reformers who are seen as too radical by the mainstream reformers, by the Lutherans, Zwinglians, and Calvinists.